It is wild to me that they don't get that. Like when I keep making this point of stagflation ahead. I'm not making it for no reason. I'm trying to point out that a, I guess two things. One, the European leaders are idiots because you're right. Everybody should have came together and said F off. It's an issue of sovereignty. The notion that 4% of the globe is going to put tariffs and try to exert power on the entirety of the globe is outrageous. And it is even more outrageous that they're like, okay, Mr. Trump, how far over do you need me to bend? Way over. Okay, is this enough? It's like, are you like, as you point out, were you Marcos in the Philippines did everything he wanted, and he said, okay, I'll take it down by 1%. It's like, I'm going to take everything from you, but you're going to, I'm going to give you nothing. And effectively, that's what he did to Europe, right? I'm going to take everything from you, but I'm going to give you nothing. And Europe's like, thank you, Daddy. Thank you for this. Thank you, Daddy. We appreciate it. Knowing full well that their businesses are going to get torched. I mean, they've said as much. This is going to be tough. We're going to have businesses that are going to close up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. From the standpoint of Americans, I don't know if they know how tariffs actually work. At the very least, I know some cultists don't care. It's just, we back Daddy, and so we're going to do whatever Daddy wants.
A lot of Americans don't even know it's American importer that's paying the tariff. A lot of Americans still thinks that foreign countries are paying tariffs. This is the kind of, our public education has failed us, Jamar.
Our public education has failed us.
Our public education have failed us. I mean, like the whole country has been mal-educated, have been educated stupid for the last decades, and now we're just seeing the consequences. We live in the idiocracy. You seen that movie, Idiocracy?
Oh yes.
Yes. For the people who haven't seen it, don't worry about it. You are living in it right now.
That movie, it's wild. What sucks? Like when Injustice came out. I don't know if you've ever watched comic books. It was Superman went rogue, and when Superman went rogue, you had Batman and everything else. Superman is representation of America. Superman going rogue is kind of this kind of allegory for how America has lost the thread. Allegory wasn't. I mean, Idiocracy wasn't supposed to be that way. Like it wasn't supposed to be just rando guy becomes the smartest man on the planet with a president that's a wrestler. Trump used to wrestle. He goes to the WWE all the time. And you're like, oh God, it's too on the nose. But it took place like 20 years ago. It seems to be correct. And that's terrifying to me. By the way, I came across this book. One of my subscribers, what is the guy's name? The author. I went through half of that book today, like 6 hours of that book straight. That's how good that book was. And he was making this argument that when elites become overrepresented in society, I think he called it a cash pump or something like that, that you get overthrows, that the government itself collapses, where you get this level of Thorson, is that his name, Thorson? Where you get levels, and he was showing instances throughout history where he could say, right here, right here, right here, right here, within a 200 time span or 200-year time span, give or take, of where it effectively takes place, where you have too many elites in the society. You have an underclass that wants to be elites, that can't be elites because you have too many overrepresented.
Wait, are you talking about the book by Peter Turgeon?
That's it.
I interviewed him. Right before the Trump election, and he just predicted basically in the 20s it's going to be politically turbulent time in United States. U.S. is due for another political
revolution
period because the elite overproduction and because the incessant elite infighting coupled with a public immiseration. Right.
Yes.
So now we have both factors. Yeah, he is great. I highly enjoyed that book. I highly recommend it.
It is a terrifying book, man. Oh, it's a terrifying book. Because as you read through it, you're like, this is literally what's taking place. Like Donald Trump is pulling out $800 billion out of Medicaid. We barely have a healthcare system in the United States. $800 billion out of it, pulling money out of SNAP. And is giving that money effectively to the wealthiest in our society while making the poor poorer. And you think to yourself, oh, that is exactly what's in the book. Like the ability for the populist class, or let's say the public, doesn't get a say. And that creates a huge amount of friction where you have a huge amount of angry masses that has a disassociation to the ruling class. You have underclass that wants to be the ruling class that says, hey, give me your anger and your swords, and we'll go and chop off the heads of the leadership. And you have a situation that is ripe for the picking. And that is effectively what, the 200-year cycle?
Oh, the name of the book, by the way, is called End Times: Elite, Counter Elites, and the Path of Political Disintegration by Peter Turchins. Yeah, I highly recommend the book.
Yeah, it is exceptional. In fact, I sent the guy interview requests. One of my audience members sent me a thing. He says, hey, can you get this guy on a show? I was like, I don't know who this guy is. And then when I read the book, I was like, oh, I'm hooked.
You should. I gotta get him back on my show, to interview, to do a follow-up, because I interviewed him before the Trump election, before the Trump assassination, even. Yeah. Like, because his book basically predicted there would be a spike in political violence, and it was just basically unfolded as the way he predicted. It's a really good book.
Yeah, it's freaky. I mean, like, because you have a lot of people who have political theories about why revolutions and whatnot take place, and he hits it on the head. And it makes sense. It's rational. It's not even like 20-dimensional chess. It's just very basically put with historical context and with this kind of, I guess, mathematical rigor where he can show it in numbers. And as you're listening to it, you can kind of patch it with what's happening in your own government. I mean, you could say Trump was that guy who was the one who was trying to overthrow the system. But then when he gets in office, he becomes just a part of the system. And you have all of these people
dude is on the Epstein's list, man. We know he's on the Epstein's list. Yes. I mean, now
so you think Trump is serious? I mean, because if you think he's on Epstein's list, that means you think he's being compelled. I think he's on the list.
No, I don't know if he's being blackmailed, but I'm pretty sure he's on the list. And which reminded me, his FBI director, who is supposed to give us the list, open to publicize Epstein's list. Instead, he traveled to New Zealand recently, and he opened a FBI office in New Zealand for the stated purpose of countering Chinese influence. And remember there was a former, quote unquote, former CIA guy. I don't believe any former CIA. Anyway, there's a former CIA guy who said, Epstein might be for intelligence asset of Russia or China.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Who believes that shit? Who believes that shit? I mean, okay, so but why is the FBI director going to New Zealand to open a FBI office? Well, this is because they are really working really hard to clamping down dissent in those U.S. vassal countries who might be opposed to move into a hostile relationship with China. Because New Zealand is always seen as like the weakest link of the Five Eye Anglo countries. And so now they're going to put in an office in New Zealand to help the Kiwis to fight their largest export market, China. Their biggest trading partner, China. They're going to fight China. But this is the same playbook they played out in Australia, in Canada, and I would even argue United States. It's several years ago, it's always like the intelligence agency of Australia or intelligence agency of Canada, in cahoots, of course, with intelligence service of the United States, released a report said there's Chinese interference in our election. There's Chinese interference in our politics. And then they open a series of investigations, and they will list a list of politicians who have been, seen hobnobbing with the Chinese diplomat or whatever. And so the whole goal is to shut down any kind of dissenting voice on, hey guys, why we fighting with our largest customer? Because Australia's largest customers is also China, right? And and Canada also have a very lucrative tie with trading relationship with China, and so they essentially did the whole Russia Gate thing before
With China.
Russiagate, but except on
Interesting.
China, in Australia and in Canada, and now they're going after New Zealand apparently, because they realize there will be people asking questions. Hey, why are we fighting China? China is our biggest trade partner. Why are we fighting with a trade partner? It's like, this is why they're opening the top priority for FBI director, instead of publicizing Epstein List, is to go to New Zealand and open the FBI office.
Well, I've said before that this empire does need to collapse. And, the reality of it is, when this finally falls, I mean, for God's sake, man, we're $37 trillion in debt. And these guys are still like, hey, we need to get our next war on with China. It's like, well, what are you talking about? Shouldn't you deal with the debt? Shouldn't you deal with, the miseration of your public? Nope, we don't need to do that. The world is fantastic. We're doing fine. I'm buying me another yacht tomorrow. It's like, okay, I think, there's problems with this. And the wild part is, we are paying so much money in order to maintain this empire that when this falls, oh man, when it falls.
You know why? You know why, Jamar? You know why? Because U.S. hasn't had serious ideological challenges since the end of the first Cold War 1.0.
Yeah.
Back in the Cold War, they still have to compete with Soviet Union ideologically, so they have to appease the masses domestically. They have to do all these social programs to give up a corner of the pie, so to speak, to get the buy-in from the working class, right? But so right after Soviet Union collapsed, guess what happened? You have people like Clinton comes in and start scrapping out all these programs. But Clinton said, "Oh, we're centrist. We're moving to the center." What he's actually doing is pushing to the right, to adopt all these neoliberal politics and chuck all the other social welfare part out of the window. And so this is how we ended up with the situation we're in today, where we're going back to the inequality level back comparable to like the roaring 20s, back robber baron days. Now we're going back to the robber baron eras, where Elon Musk is probably going to be the first man who's going to be the first trillionaire, right? And he's a guy that for a while bankrolled the government. He put Trump in office. He donated just in June he just donated $50 million to Trump. This is just a month ago. He donated $50 million to Trump. So yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, he had the highest amount given to Republicans over the course of that last election cycle. I could be wrong. You fact check me on that.
I mean, it's either him or the owner of Las Vegas Sand, right? Marion Sheldon.
Adelson.
Adelson.
Yeah, it's so screwed up. And you would think that it's what's wild about that book, just to go back for a moment, is he points out this process just keeps repeating. Like, nobody says, hey, why do these governments keep going belly up? Why do this stuff keeps happening? It's a repetitive process that happens over and over and over again. And I guess we'll see if China.
He did point out there were a couple points where instead of revolution or war, a reform happened, and one example he used was New Deal, right? New Deal, but
yes,
I don't think New Deal is possible in today's environment. Like what the hell? I mean, you just have people like AOC, say, "Oh, New Green Deal," and it means nothing. It means nothing.
And as you pointed out, the New Deal was in relation to the Soviet Union. FDR had, he was like 20, 30 years from the Russian Revolution. That was still on his mind. You had communists in the country, socialists in the country. You had all of these like political forces that actually had teeth. And so, that was under that model. That's not our model today. You have a milquetoast, weak, hated trash of a party, Democrats, with the Republican Party that's just as every bit as rapacious. And from the standpoint of this end of history stuff, they don't, yes, China is a competitor, but not in the way that the Soviet Union was. So it was almost like these two things were kind of functioning together. It's like they don't know what to do with China. in this case. And they're more inclined to go to war as opposed to dealing with the economic realities.
Because China says, okay, we play by the rules. All the rules you set down after World War II, the whole international war order that you set up, we play by that rule. And China is winning. This is why they're freaking out. It's like, oh, that's not how it's supposed to happen. China is supposed to remain this vast pool of cheap labor that's making our shoes and maybe our iPhones, right? They're not supposed to be the ones making cars, making EVs, and making Huawei phones that's competing with Apple. And they're not the one that's supposed to move into AI. That is supposed to be our thing. We are going to be the first to make Terminator and Skynet, and then China will be fucked. Right? That is how the end of history is supposed to end up. There's not supposed to be an alternative development model where China, for the last 40 years, they waged no wars. They did not have slavery. They somehow was able to pull 800 million people out of poverty and uplift their country, right? And this is why there's a lot of Congress approved $1.6 billion for anti-China propaganda, because they don't want people to look at China as an alternative model. They don't want China to say, hey, we don't have to wage wars, endless war all the time. Look at China. They're doing fine precisely because they're not waging war. They're actually plowing all their earnings into their own development. We could have nice, clean cities. We could have high-speed rails. But instead, what those propaganda serve to do is they're trying to prove, Okay. I know you guys know U.S. is screwed up. It's dystopian, but China is even worse. It's more dystopian. You can't. No, China. That's not optional. That's not viable, right? I mean, if you look at all these viral posting of China right now, whether it's their high-speed rail or whether it's shiny cities, all the copium is about. You actually forget about randos on internet. You have Jon Stewart literally on his show. He said, well, that is why we have shitty subways in New York City? Why it's dirty? That is a price of our freedom.
He was talking about Russia. He wasn't even talking about China. He was talking about Russia.
Yeah, he was talking about Russia. But it's the same. You know what I'm saying? It's the same. And he said that unironically. He said as a joke, it would be a good joke. But except he said that unironically. That is the price of our freedom. Okay, guys, that's you have to accept it. You have to accept this country is being turned into a shithole by our billionaire oligarchs, and you have to become. You cannot have any hope, right? They're trying to distill despair. Because you're not supposed to have any hope. This is the best as it gets. This is the end of history, folks. The United States is as best as it gets. You cannot look elsewhere for different alternatives. No. They're all bad. China bad, Russia bad. You are stuck with us. You're stuck with Elon Musk and Trump forever.
What a stupid argument for him to make. He mistakes freedom for money, almost as an allegory, like a capitalistic system and freedom are the two same things. Missing the point that, dude, if you can't get healthcare, if you can't get education, if you're in shitty subways, if you're is that really freedom in that context? If that is the situation to which you have to live in, he has such a slim point of view of freedom, maybe because Jon Stewart is rich. And so from his point of view, my life is great. I don't have to take the subway. I can drive a car. I can fly a plane if I wanted to go to subway. If I wanted to do that, I could do that. I'm Jon Stewart. This is just the price of freedom for all of you other lemmings who have to effectively deal with the shit on a daily basis. Yeah, okay. When the revolution comes, let's see if that's the point of view. Because I guess it's such an aggravating argument to be like, hey, Russia has great subways because they are a more militaristic, or let's say a more authoritarian country. And so we have to accept shitty subways in the United States because we're a capitalistic country. And that's the price of freedom. It's like, oh, dude, they have chandeliers in their subways, though. That chandelier looks sexy in the subway. I don't have to worry about getting mugged. I don't have to smell urine. I don't have to, you start pointing out these things. You say to yourself, okay, is there a way to have the quote unquote freedom and nice subways? Like, is it possible that those two things?
What is freedom? You know, women can walk safely at nights on the big streets of Chinese cities at night.
Right.
That is freedom. That is freedom. Little kids can play outside after dark. That is freedom.
Not
You know,
dying of
United
health
States, you
without
can't even drink alcohol outside on the street without a brown paper bag.
Yeah, it's like freedom for who to do what. And that's really what it boils down to. They, the thing is in the US, and I'll let you go after this, they don't see the bias. Like from their point of view, the very fact of being in a capitalist system is by definition freedom. And you would hear some like oligarchs, economists, they'd be like, hey, I don't see the difference between a democracy and a capitalistic system. I don't even think you need the democracy. You just need the capitalistic system and everything will work out. It's like, dude, you are out of your mind. They don't see this notion of the bias of, hey, let's send kids into coal mines because we can pay them $2 in order to dig coal with their own hands. Who cares if they get sick later? They're making a choice to go. It's the capitalistic way. Like, they miss that point, and they miss this notion that the capitalist system eats away at the democracy. You could see it in the political class, where these guys are effectively paid. They should wear, spandex with numbers on themselves to show who they're effectively representing when they're in Congress. It is grift. I mean, all of it is a grift, and we suffer the consequences of that grift. Carl, man, I always enjoy these conversations, man. I really do. Thank you for this. I deeply appreciate it. Just so the audience will know, Carl Jha, he is host of Silk and Steel podcasts focused on China, surrounding regions and their history, culture, and politics. You can follow Carl on Twitter at Carl Jha. Find his podcast on Twitter at Steel Silk, letter N, and subscribe to them to his podcast on patreon.com, Silk, the letter N, and Steel. By the way, Carl, just so the audience will know, you do two things. You do your show, but you also do on your Patreon a time span of what is taking place, kind of like if people will ever watch The Great War, where the guy goes week by week by week of what has been taking place over the course of the time frame. But you're going over the 5,000 years. I'm repeating this just in case the audience didn't hear me when you first got here, because it's such a fascinating idea. And I want them.
I'm not doing week by week because that will take. I don't have the lifespan for that, so I'm doing year by year of the Chinese history. Okay, so I'm doing a chronological retelling of the Chinese history. I started in prehistory, and now I'm currently at 316 BC. And I also sometimes remind my audience by doing to situate them to compare what was going on in other part of the world. I say, for example, 323 BC, that's when Alexander the Great died. Now this is what happened in China at the same time. And so I right now I covered pretty much all the way up to what would be the Hellenistic age in the West, but in China at this point. Yeah.
So you have what, 4,600 and some odd amount to go.
I have 2,300 years to go. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. AD BC.
Yeah.
AD BC.
Yeah. No worries. Two. Because just only a couple of thousand years. Well, I already covered like a couple of thousand years on my podcast. Yeah, I already produced like 150 episodes. And now I'm but the thing is, as I dive deeper into the Chinese history, I'm moving closer to the present. There will be more documentation. There will be more things to cover. So I might even move even slower. Might not be week by week, but I'm taking my time. I plan to live a long time, Jamar. So I'll be here.
You'll finish it. You'll cover it.
Yeah, at my own time, my own pace.
Carl, thank you for this, man. Check him out, man. It's just a fantastic idea. You have a good one, okay? Be safe, man.
Thank you.